Hello there, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Apologies for interrupting your little transmat beam there. I know it's dangerous, but I'm sure you'll forgive us for scooping you up for what we're about to discuss for the next hour and change. And don't worry, this is a good podcast, not like that one run by that bastard Conrad. But I digress. Continuing our opening season, where we focus on the Doctor's most famous enemy and pop culture icon, the Daleks, well, we couldn't possibly get through it without discussing their most loved, is that the right word? Appearance. Yes, we're heading into the bunker to take a look at one of the most adored Doctor Who episodes of all time. Officially, it says on the DVD sticker, Genesis of the Daleks. Mike is taking a break from hosting this time around, as he's just too in awe of this one. I'm DK, your king of the norm. But fear not, fellow time travelers, he's still with us. We're just swapping duties for this one. So please allow me to introduce Muto extraordinaire, Mr. Mike Wilson.
Yes, hashtag I stand with unit.
How are you doing, buddy? You looking forward to talking about this one?
Oh, yes, indeed. Just be careful. Doing that without a dot is dangerous, you know.
Have you slipped into what we do in the shadows?
I was trying to be Tom Baker, but yeah, it's probably...
That was Tom Baker? Holy crap.
It was my best attempt at Tom Baker. I'm sorry.
Oh, dear. I hope you've got your behind the scenes ready. I know I haven't.
I have behind the... I mean, I obviously have to note and watch the episodes and everything, and I also have the behind the scenes prepped and ready, so we're all good.
Nice one. So that's one of us. So next up, we've got another first timer joining us here on the show. And what an episode to make an introduction on. He's a long-time fan of the show. He's a feature writer and interviewer. It's Mr. Phil Newman. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me on.
Not at all. How are you today, sir?
I'm not too bad, thank you.
Cool.
All good.
Nice. It did take us a while to get you here, but I'm glad we finally managed it, and what a story to appear on.
Yeah, it's a great story.
He was exiled to Earth for a few years. That was all.
Who told you?
Who
leaked that information?
You're quite involved in fandom, but have you been up to anything regarding the show in recent days or weeks?
Not involved with the show. I mean, I went to the BFI event on Sunday, which was celebrating 20 years of New Who, which was we saw Dalek and Father's Day up on the big screen, which was great.
Oh, wow.
With special guests, with a special appearance by Murray Gold at the end, who was awarded a special recognition award by the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, who were co-hosting it, if you like. So that was great. You know, Rob Sherman, Camille Kaduri was there, Joe Ahern, who directed 5 episodes of that series, making a rare appearance. So yeah, it was great.
Nice. Well, I'm gonna ask you a few more questions, if I may, but I'm gonna head into our next segment in order to do this, which is a regular feature I say regular feature. We've done it for about 6 episodes, but it's labelled Into the Vortex. Where we always ask our new guests a couple of related questions, so just so we can get into your mindset for the show. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you, Phil, throw this one at you. What was your first ever Who story?
Difficult to say exactly. My earliest memory, I know. Well, put it this way: I know that I was watching from season 8 of the classic series, but I had seen the show before that. My earliest sort of memory is of Cybermen certainly a Cyberman breaking out of like a cocoon, which I realise must have been probably the end of episode 4 of the invasion, the missing episode. Although I don't have any memories of those Cybermen, strangely enough, because the memory that I really have is of the moon-based tomb variants, being terrified of those. So I'm presuming I must have seen them or pictures of them or something. But I do remember being under the sofa, being under the sofa, looking up at our black and white TV set and seeing this shape moving around inside, and just the terror of that before it broke out. So
Ah,
that's like a tangible, earliest kind of memory.
that's a classic memory. That one was that the story that made you a fan? Were you a fan instantly, or did
No,
you
no.
come
I
back
mean,
later?
I wasn't. I mean, I was a regular viewer, I guess.
Yeah,
I mean, it was something we always watched in our household. I started taking more notice, I guess, by the time we got to season 10, because I started writing out the Radio Times blurb and stuff in a little notebook in different colours, which I called my Doctor Who file. And so I just wrote, episode by episode. I remember starting to do that, and I redid it loads of times. And I carried that on right through to season 18, 19. I kept on doing that. And the 10th anniversary special was quite a big sort of, that was quite an important sort of magazine, I guess.
yeah.
Just the excitement of seeing story titles before they'd appeared on screen and things like that for season 11. So yeah, that's probably, but didn't actually become I didn't really meet any other fans. There were a few boys at school who bought Target books, and a couple of school friends who'd occasionally, I'd go around on a Saturday at tea time and watch an episode, and they would come back to mine occasionally, things like that, but very, very rarely.
Next question: what is your favourite story? And I'm going to ask you on both classic and modern, and why.
Classic. It changes, but the Sea Devils is one of my favourite ever stories. It's certainly always in my top 3.
Yeah.
So let's go for Sea Devils.
Cool.
Just like a seminal thing. I remember it clearly. I remember the repeat omnibuses very clearly.
Yeah.
Delgado is probably at peak. Delgado's master. I think he's superb in that story. And it's different from pretty much the rest of that era. It's kind of like the middle point, I think. It's almost like the middle of the whole Pertwee era. And it's free from unit, which I always think is like a breath of fresh air. With the Navy, you just have different relationships going on. And it's just, it's very exciting. It's very stylishly directed by Michael Bryant. And it's a great script by Malcolm Hulke.
Yeah.
And I think it's a stronger script in many ways. It's certainly more dynamic. I mean, and of course, all the value from the involvement of the Navy and all of that, just the production values are incredible.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. What about a modern story? Do you have any favourites out of those?
That's sort of more, I think that's more tricky in a lot of ways. I could probably do one per Doctor, but I'm not sure I could do one above all. I don't know. Because I love most of season 1. I love Eccleston's series. That's what was quite nice about seeing those two up on the big screen on Sunday. It's just got a feel and a look of its own. And it's just terrific. It's got an amazing energy. And it's fascinating because, of course, it was done in a vacuum. Nobody knew it was going to be a success when they were making it. None of it was filmed after it had been broadcast, after it had started broadcasting, I mean. So, it's fascinating, and it's so strong and so confident. It's, Season 4 is probably my favourite of the seasons, because I think that Doctor and Donna thing really, really worked.
Yeah.
I think it's the most consistent season we've had, possibly until this one, the current one.
Yeah.
In terms of consistency, yes, there's a couple of episodes that aren't quite as good as others, but I don't think there are any really weak. There's no weak episodes in series 4. and it's so strong, and it builds to such a great climax. I love Matt Smith's first series. I think is really good. I love his Doctor. He may be my favourite Doctor, but I don't think he's necessarily the one that was best served.
Yeah.
After that first season, to be honest, Vincent and the Doctor is probably my favourite of that.
Nice one. It's a very good episode, that one.
Yeah, it's just fantastic, and it's so unlike the rest of it. You know, it doesn't get bogged down with continuity and Moffatisms and timey-wimey stuff. It's quite a straightforward, but it's a really emotional and it has a very strong message too. You know, so yeah, that's probably one. Let's go just for that, Vincent the Doctor. Just
nice one. Do you have
here all night?
Do you have a favourite Dalek story? Considering one like we're talking about the Daleks this season, have you got a standout one that you particularly love?
Do I? The one that I love, Power of the Daleks. Yeah, I'll go with Power.
Power.
Yay! The second person to say that after me.
Not that I've ever seen it. You know, not that I've ever seen it all. I've listened to it. I can listen to the soundtrack, and the animation is great too. It's such a strong story and an uncompromising story. You know, considering this was the regeneration. You know, just 2 stories in the first regeneration, you don't get any concessions. And it's so cleverly structured in that it must have been incredible for an audience watching at the time who have just come back after the summer break and had 8 episodes of Hartnell, and then all of a sudden he's gone.
Yeah,
without any real explanation. And even the companions are the audience, because even they don't really think it's him. They're not sure. Is it him? Is it an intruder? Is it, is it whatever? And the only way we actually begin to get confident about that this is the same man is the fact that the Daleks recognize him.
Yeah.
And that's a very clever little twist on the whole thing. And it adds power, and it adds, it makes the Daleks scary because they've got one up on us in a way.
Yeah.
And they're cunning. They're really cunning. It's the first time. I mean, they were really well handled, I think, most of the time in Master Plan. And there was a cunning streak in the original story, the Daleks. They talked amongst themselves, and they did. They plotted. They weren't just shouty metal things. And Master Plan obviously had Douglas Camfield at the helm, which is why visually they're handled well. They're a menace. But yeah, Power.
Nice one. And obviously that's yours, Mike. But I was going to ask you, Mike. Every episode, you ask everybody what's their favourite classic and modern. Did we ever cover yours?
I did. I recorded something to go before the re-upload of Doctor Who and the Daleks on this channel, saying what mine was, and mine was The Power of the Daleks. And if you want to listen back, it's almost word for word exactly what Phil just said.
And did you also go into your favourite stories, classic and modern?
Classic and modern. I don't know if I did.
Yeah, because I just thought, because nobody's ever asked you this, because you're always asking everybody else. So I thought, perfect opportunity, yeah.
I feel like I've mentioned it in the past, but I don't know if it's on another episode. My favorite classic story, and if I have to pick a favorite over the whole era of the entirety of the show, it would be City of Death, just because I'm a huge Douglas Adams nerd anyway, and that is, although it's not credited to him because of the whole pseudonym situation, it feels so much like Doctor Who does Hitchhiker's Guide and has Douglas Adams-isms and that kind of humor and everything. That I just absolutely adore it. From the modern era, it's going to be difficult to pick. There's so many that are up there, and I don't know if I can pick between them, but let's see if I can think of something that stands out. It's going to... Do you know what? Actually, I'm going to get probably an awful lot of crap for this, but I think it might be The Power of the Doctor.
Yeah?
I really like that.
Yeah. I actually really enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest. I wasn't that era's biggest fan, but that kind of brought me back into it. So yeah. Any particular reason why you loved it as that much?
I think I've defended it a lot of times, and I've just said that, like, I love the kind of fan stuff. Don't get me wrong, I'm kind of here for that, and I'm not complaining. But I just really loved the emotional through line of it, and I was I've rarely been as affected since the very first time by like a regeneration. But I remember just being fully devastated for myself and for Yaz that the Doctor was regenerating, and genuinely getting emotional at the kind of scenes of them together, and fully breaking down when they're at that meeting at the end and they're like, is she going to be okay? Of course she's going to be okay. She's the Doctor. And oh, God. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm gone now. So, yeah. It just hit me emotionally.
It was a really emotional episode.
Yeah, exactly.
And for me, because I actually mostly enjoyed Jodie's era more than the era before it. What astounded me really, and what really moved me, was just how open Chibnall Chris wrote that and how inclusive it was to the JNT era and those Doctors and companions.
Oh, I love that too. I mean, as a huge fan of those eras,
yeah,
I was there for the fan bit of like, okay, this is now Tegan and Ace getting closure. And I'm absolutely loving that, even before we get to the huge...
But to make time and give them stuff to do, it wasn't just a cameo. They were an integral part of that plot, and they had screen time and stuff to do. And to reunite them as well with their Doctors and include those Doctors in a way that, strangely enough, Moffat could never find a way of bringing old Doctors back. Exactly. And yet Chris did, and in quite a magnificent way. I think the Guardians of the Edge. I think that was it's a very simple idea, but it was perfectly in tune with what was going on story wise. But that's what made me emotional. It made me emotional for the actors.
Absolutely,
because I was just thinking, and Sophie has gone on record as saying, when she had a phone call, saying, "Oh, they want you back in Doctor Who," and then she got the script and she put the phone down and cried and burst into tears. And it's like I kind of felt that, because you just kind of think how lovely for those actors to be asked back and given stuff, given material, not just a hello, thank you and goodbye. So I just felt it wore its heart on its sleeve, that episode, in all sorts of ways. And then, of course, to get William Russell in at the end.
Oh, the last possible moment you could have as well.
Beautiful, really. It was just beautiful.
Well, I mean, now we know what kind of makes both of you tick, really. We're going to go deeper into your likes and dislikes. So, yeah, as we head into our eponymous hit or miss section.
How I hate these hit or miss performances.
And this is pretty much straightforward. It's just 3 or 4 little things taken from the Who universe, little aspects, and see what we think to them. See if we think it's a hit or a miss. Yeah, so we're going to come to an episode first of all, and so I just wondered if you think this was a hit or miss. And the episode is "It Takes You Away." And I'll come to you first on this one, Phil.
That was quite an unusual episode, I thought. It's a while since I've seen it. But actually I thought it was quite odd and creepy until the very end. Am I thinking of the right episode?
Yes.
Yes.
Was it a frog or a toad or
Right at the very end,
Yeah.
the Tesseract, is it, or something?
Yeah.
Something
Solid
like
Tract, I think, is the name of
Solid
it.
Tract.
Oh, that's a solid track.
How did I remember that?
It's you, mate. This is what I'm saying. If I do a quiz show with you, I am screwed.
Yeah. Because it was kind of Scandi, wasn't it? In
Yes.
sort of tone. It looked gorgeous, but then so did most of the Jodie era, to be fair. That was the visuals were always really on point, and it had sort of like a filmic quality to it. Way it was directed, I imagine. And yeah, I'm still not entirely sure about the toad or frog on the chair, but I sort of got it. It didn't. That didn't. I know some people that would have spoiled, but it didn't really.
Yeah. So would you say it's a hit for you or a miss?
Oh
or...
yeah, a hit. It's not a miss.
Cool. What about you, Mike?
See, now I'm going to come across as negative. You've picked one of the very few things that I would say was a total miss for me.
Oh God, really?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't respond to it, and I think part of it, to be fair, is my own fault because I was expecting something completely different, and I don't know why, but I expected, like, coming towards the end of the season, we've just been programmed to expect big, like, fan lore dumps and stuff. And so when they were talking about, like, antimatter universes and the strange creature, I was like, oh, Omega's coming. It's really cool. It's going to be amazing. And then we got, like, a frog on a chair, and I was like, what the fuck is this?
I kind of like that. I kind of like that.
That's not Stephen Thorne. That's a frog.
It put you on the back foot.
You know? I'm not sure Stephen Thorne was alive anyway, but even if he was, I'm not sure him coming in and booming and ranting and waving his fists around would necessarily have fitted in with that Scandi tone.
No, but it was a bit slow for me. I didn't respond to the tone of it. I think there's been better disability representation before and since as well. It felt very perfunctory to that episode, kind of tacked on. Didn't think the guest star, the actor chap, was particularly great. I liked that was the episode with ribbons, wasn't it? Right, so I kind of liked Kevin Eldon playing that character for the moments that were there. If I'm looking for positives to try and hang something on, and I did love that it's the episode where we finally get Ryan, unveiling his true feelings to Graham and calling him Granddad, which took 9 episodes to do. So I appreciated that at the end of the episode, but other than that, it just felt a bit of a damp squib, especially for the last episode before the finale for me.
So it's a bit of a miss for you, this one.
It's a miss for me, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've got to agree with Phil. It's a hit for me. I love the whole mystery aspect of it. Whatever you think of the payoff, I think they set it up really well. And it does have that Scandi tone, as you said. It's one of the standout episodes for me. And I think it's precisely because it's not what you expect. And... yeah, I enjoyed that one. So I'm sorry, Mike, but with 2 to 1, right. It's going to be a hit for this one. So Mike's like, yeah, you think so? I'm just going to edit that one out.
No, I don't enjoy being negative, but I've got to be honest with my opinion. And I've defended the Jodie era.
Being negative.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, you did find stuff to like about it.
If you're not, being negative is about doing it for the sake of being negative, and that's not justifying what your opinion. That's fine.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
So, the next one, and believe it or not, Mike, sent, just for the audience, Mike sent me a little snippet from social media the other day, completely apropos of nothing, and it was just kind of ironic because I picked this next one already, but the next hit or miss is the character Shona.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it just made me laugh how you sent me the.
I love that so much.
The little social media between the actress and Verada, but I'll come to you first on this one, Mike. What do you think to Shona?
I've said since the episode aired, and many, many times loudly since, absolute hit. I think Faye Marseille is a fantastic actress, not just because she's also from vaguely around where I live, but also because I thought she was brilliant in Game of Thrones when she was in there as the waif character. Thought she was great in Last Christmas, an episode which I really love. Again, controversially to some people. And I really, really wanted her to become a companion. I think I could, it's speculation, but I do get the sense that was going to be the idea if Clara had left. that Moffat was kind of setting up Shona to be a new companion. So I did feel a little kind of disappointed and shortchanged at the end of that when she wasn't, because I could have happily followed her, and I think that would be a great actress if ever we were casting for a companion or a future Doctor for that matter, to be honest. But I think she was just
a really good Doctor.
Yeah, especially if you see what she's doing on Andor at the minute, the way she's kind of handling that role. I mean, come on. So yeah, massive hit. I think she gave a great performance. The character was relatable, was kind of fun and funny without being cheesy. Despite the fact you had Nick Frost being very cheesy in the same episode, But he's playing Santa Claus. What else can you do? So yeah, massive hit. I've always loved Shona. I think she's probably top of the list of people who should have been companions, along with Rita from the God Complex.
Nice. So it's easy to see that it's a big hit for you with that one. So what about you, Phil?
Well, I'm glad you just elucidated as to which episode that was.
All right.
Okay.
Shona? That I was thinking, what episode is that from? Is this a hit or miss just for the character or for the episode?
For the character, just for the character.
Yeah, miss. I think. I just don't remember being that enthralled and thinking, "Oh, she'd be amazing as a companion," or anything. I don't really recall. Yeah, but then I have to say, not much about those years did enthrall me. So.
Yeah, you mentioned that, but you just don't find the character that memorable.
Well, no, obviously not.
Yeah, you've taken the place of me. Mike normally has to prompt me.
That has happened before. We just reviewed Victory of the Daleks, and I put up a picture even of the Dalek-Sec hybrid, and was like, "Do you remember this?" And we had Rune on, and they were just like, "I have no recollection of this." I was like, of all the things not to remember, this is pretty memorable of a weird appearing thing as well. And they were just like, "Nope."
I did do a rewatch of seasons. From last Christmas actually, through to Twice Upon a Time a couple of months back, for the first time since broadcast, really. And yeah, Last Christmas has its moments, but yeah, not a favourite really. It has some good moments, and the dream crabs are scary, and whatever, but I just find it a really bizarre mix with the Santa Claus thing coming in, and it's just a bit odd. But, yeah, no offense to Shona, but
that's fair enough. I think I'm going to have to side with you here, Mike. As you say, no, don't worry. We don't disagree on everything. I mean, most things, yeah. But as you say, Faye is a fantastic actress. I'm loving her in Andor, and I kind of fell in love with Shona the minute I saw her. I just think she was a really kind of fun
It was the
character.
funky dance to Slade, wasn't it?
It was. It helped immeasure. You know my wheelhouse, dude. So yeah, I was kind of gutted that she didn't go on to become a companion, really, because I was kind of hoping, but it wasn't to be. But yeah, I love the character. So it's a big hit from me.
I should interject quickly and say that I'll put it up on screen for the audience, but we should clarify what I sent you was because Faye Marseille and Varada Sethu play lovers on Andor. Faye Marseille had posted perhaps Shona should come back to Doctor Who and reunite there, and Varada said, I'd look for you and find you in any universe, which was like, oh, really sweet.
You'll have to put that up if you can find it, man.
I will. I'm sure I've got the clipping somewhere, but I thought that was a nice touch. Clearly, as they're both kind of aware of the nerd stuff that they started and how we're all like shipping them and wanting them to all be, in every show ever.
Yeah. So the next one, as we know, we're looking at Daleks this season, and I don't think you've got this one lined up, Mike. If you have, I apologise. But what is everyone's opinion with regards to the story Resurrection of the Daleks? Yeah, Phil, what is your take on Resurrection of the Daleks? Hit or a miss?
Actually, I'm probably going to say a miss. Probably my it'd be my least favorite classic Dalek story. Probably.
What is it about it that doesn't resonate with you?
I don't like the sort of very cynical tone. I'm not that keen on the Dalek voices. The acting is variable, to say the least, in that story. So it's got a great cast, but not all of them are that great. Shall we say? I think it's more about being miscast.
Yeah.
I think yes, it's a strange beast, Resurrection. I think Davison's very good in it. It's strange because I like Janet Field Tegan's departure. But she's actually not given that much to do during the story. Not huge amounts. I think there's probably too many characters, to be honest. It all gets a little bit muddled. And Turlough doesn't really have huge amounts to do either other than skulk around hiding behind corridors out of vision of a Dalek. Yeah. Yes.
Not a big fan of
season 21 is probably the strongest. I don't know. In many ways, it's the strongest of Davison's series, but that's not one of my favourites.
That's fair enough. So that's a miss from you. What about you, Mike?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me this. One of the reasons it's not on here is because my feelings about this are so uncertain. Because I really want to like it, and I have done since I first saw it. And I'm kind of like, I'm trying to force myself into it, to like train myself, almost mind control myself to like it. So I've watched it many times.
If you don't like it, you don't like it.
There's so many good ideas there that I kind of want to like it. And so I've watched it and kind of can see that, yes, if we're talking about the episode in itself, it's going to have to be a miss. I just think, as much as I like a lot of what they're going for, it isn't executed very well.
Yeah.
So, and I have to say, since trying to watch it multiple times and getting the Blu-ray set, I have got the novelization in audiobook form, which really goes into a lot more detail, which massively improves things because it clarifies things and it gives, inner monologues, and characters get more depth and everything has a bit more time to breathe. And it's obviously the kind of original script, so before any changes were made or anything. So that improves it, but it's just like I say, the reason I want to like it is because I like so many of the ideas. I like the concept of, going back and finding Davros and him trying to double cross. Sounds like a good idea. I love the idea of the kind of Dalek sleeper agent, the character that kind of seems so sweet and innocent and then turns out to be a spy, but then, uncovers his humanity to kind of ultimately prove to be their undoing. That could have been a really good plot. And then I think in another episode it would have been, but it just feels like it's, as you said, it's miscast and it's really weirdly woven through the story. I've got to.
There's too many things going on. Then you've got the Magellan virus, and you've got this, and you've got that, and it's like this whole mishmash of different things.
Yeah.
And it's like, concentrate on the psychology. I mean, and then all of a sudden, the Daleks are creating duplicates to invade Gallifrey.
Exactly.
It comes out of nowhere and disappears just as fast.
That could have been great if that was the kind of the main plot of the episode. That could have been brilliant. There's a lot that you could have explored there, but as you said, that comes out of nowhere. It's like episode, I don't know, like at half of episode 2, and then it's just like, by the way, we're going to actually clone you now, Doctor. So sit there, and I'm like, where's this come from?
The scenes in Docklands are very moody and atmospheric, but it's
there's great moments. I mean, the moment where you don't even that poor bystander that Tegan's trying to get the attention of, but he's kind of got headphones on doing the whole metal detecting or whatever, and he just coldly gets killed. It's like that belongs in a much better story, frankly, because that's a really impactful
moment. That's pure Sayward, isn't it? That's pure Sayward. But it kind of feels like more like the season after. It's kind of the season was criticized for being overtly violent. Resurrection is a violent story, but it doesn't really have humor. Or if the humor is there, it's very, very black and it's not really funny, humorous humor.
I'm kind of with you as well that it doesn't justify the violence, and so the tone just comes off really cynical and dark. But that's my biggest, I have, again, a controversial opinion time. I'm not a huge fan of Caves of Androzani for exactly the same reason. It's just too cynical. I know everybody else loves it, but I'm just kind of like, it's all about how bleak,
but it's not darkly cynical in that same way that Saywood writes.
No,
there is humour there. There is humour there. Yes, it's gritty and everything else, but it's so cleverly directed as well.
Yeah, I just and similarly, from the same season, Warriors of the Deep, where it just ends with there should have been another way. Everybody's dead, and I'm just kind of like, at this point, I'm just exhausted with the idea of, it's so gritty to do stories where there's no good guys and everybody's a bastard and we're all going to end up dead even if we are good. And I'm just like, this doesn't feel like Doctor Who to me. Not to be that guy, because it can be whatever it wants to be, but it's not really what I want from the show.
But it isn't really Doctor Who. That's the thing, really. It isn't really.
Yeah.
Not family viewing Doctor Who.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So yeah, miss to give you a long-winded answer. I'm sure.
Yeah. TLDR. It's. I'm not going to go over it, but it's a mess pretty much for the points that you've brought up. And it's weird because I think it was this kind of period that I really solidified as a fan when I was younger. And I remember loving this one at the time. And then I had a rewatch a couple of years ago, went back, and I was just completely unimpressed. As you say, there's some nice ideas in there. There's some good moments in there, but it never makes a cohesive whole. And you come away feeling, I'm not going to say dirty, but as you say, it's so cynical that it doesn't feel like Who to me. So yeah, that's 3 misses on that one. So that's the first miss we've got from this episode. Okay, now we've got that little kerfuffle out of the way. We're going to head over to the Carla Dome for today's story of choice, which is, of course, Genesis of the Daleks. And seeing as we switch roles this time around, I'm coming over to you for this one, Mike. What have you got for us behind the scenes on the time-space visualizer?
That meant that you could just tune in and see any event in history.
Yes, that's exactly what this is.
No, Doctor, you're kidding.
Yes, well, as I squint and see all of the information in front of me. Sorry if it's a bit long-winded and there's quite a lot of it, but this is, as you said, quite an important Doctor Who episode, as the sticker on the DVD will attest. So, I just have to start us off here, once aboard the series, new producer Philip Hinchcliffe and script editor Robert Holmes discovered that their predecessors had already committed to a new Dalek serial by creator Terry Nation. Nation had initially pitched a storyline which disappointed the previous showrunners Terence Dix and Barry Letts. That's showrunner and script editor, I should say, who suggested he instead investigate the origins of the Daleks. Terence Dix recalls, Barry looked at it and he said he sold us this story last year. We had this meeting and Barry took him through it step by step, and Terry said, you're quite right, I don't know what came over me. You didn't notice when I wrote Planet of the Daleks, but I'll actually do you another one this time. So that was a little bit of editorializing, but never mind. So we abandoned that. Barry said that he'd never really gone into the beginnings of where the Daleks began, and Terry, bless him, came up with Genesis, not the band. The resulting scripts, developed with significant input from Robert Holmes, would not only reimagine the Daleks' history, but also introduce one of the programme's all-time greatest villains, Davros. Elizabeth Sladen highlighted his first appearance as her scariest moment on screen and said, the first glimpse of Davros emerging from that smoke, that's the one I'll never forget because it was a rare moment when everything seemed to collide to be real. The hairs stood up on the back of your neck. I don't know anything that comes close. Terrifying. Excuse me. Philip Hinchcliffe was determined to make his mark with the production standards of these episodes. He said, Terry Nation had already written the script before I was appointed, so I thought we'd better do something bloody good with the Daleks because people had seen them ad nauseum. So I tried to inject more atmosphere. I asked John Friedlander to really do something good for the Davros character. We just tried to put a better design element into it, and I think David Maloney directed the episode terribly well. Speaking of Davros' appearance, it has been compared to having been inspired by Dan Dare's archenemy, the Mekon, as well as invoking horrifyingly immoral Nazi scientists such as Mengele. Location filming for this episode began in early January 1975 with that Doctor Who standard, a Surrey quarry, doubling for the war-torn surface of Skaro. Nation's script detailed the Doctor's meeting with the Time Lord in a beautiful garden. but David Maloney had other ideas. He said, I switched that and conceived the figure of the Time Lord after the Bergman Seventh Seal monk figure. The crew then transferred to TV Centre for studio work from the end of the month to late February. It was here that Michael Wisher was unveiled as Davros for the first time, having rehearsed with a paper bag on his head. Tom Baker remembered, Michael Wisher did work so seriously and was unbendingly passionate about the character. He used to make us howl with laughter. He's a very accomplished actor and had a script from the first rehearsal. He was so unself-conscious. When he used to put the bag over his head, that used to crucify me. I used to yelp. Now hitting his stride as the Doctor, Tom Baker was increasingly invested in the quality of the scripts. Liz Sladen recalled shooting the iconic genocide scene. He didn't just do it as written. Everything stopped in rehearsal and he said, just a minute, let's take this seriously. Do I destroy them and then they can never do any harm to anyone? Or do I actually say I cannot kill? I have no right to play God. He was agonizing over the dialogue. That scene was terribly important to Tom. I think that shows it's a very important scene. Tom Baker agreed. The thing about that scene was that there was no question of destroying the Daleks. Terry Nation wouldn't have put up with it. He had a wife and 3 children. Oh, Tom. As I've mentioned in a previous episode, this story has been considered, albeit unofficially, by Russell T Davies as a possible first strike in what would become the last great Time War, a central plot to the 2005 onwards iteration of the show. Once recording was complete and the program moved into post-production, it was found that certain episode durations were problematic. This resulted in a new cliffhanger for Part 3 and material from Part 5 being incorporated into Part 6. Now, just a little bit about the reception of the episode. Hailed as one of the all-time greats by Doctor Who fans, this story is also Terry Nation's favourite contribution to the programme. He said, I think it was a smashing set of episodes. I loved them. David Maloney found production values they hadn't had there for ages. Clearly not looking at the clam. It seems to me if you ask what's the best Doctor Who series ever, from my point of view, Genesis would be it. The story came third in Doctor Who Magazine's 2014 poll with a 91% rating. This is just for you, DK, when I found this one. Fans of a certain age will remember fondly the Genesis of the Daleks LP, released for Christmas 1979, which condensed the story into 60 minutes. Did you have that one, DK?
I did.
I had it on tape. I had it on cassette tape.
Wow.
I still got the tape somewhere.
I wish I still had it. That's how I came to this story.
Oh, that's awesome. I had a feeling. That's why I included this. And just finally, the story was also edited into an 85-minute omnibus by Philip Hinchcliffe and David Maloney for a special repeat screening over the 1975 Christmas period, which again might have been how a lot of people first saw this. This was a version released for the very first time on the Season 12 collection Blu-ray set, as it had previously been lost. So yeah, that's all I have.
So as we've already established, the first time I experienced this story was through that LP. I believe it was a present from my parents, and yeah, there's certain bits in this story now that I just know off by heart because I listened to the audio LP so many times. I then went on to, I believe the first time I saw this was that edited version in the Monster season. Really enjoyed it, although I didn't quite get it because, you know, at such a young age, although you pick up on the Daleks and Davros and the monsters, that kind of thing, the parallels to Nazi Germany were kind of lost on me. So it wasn't until much later that I saw it again, and it kind of blew my mind, as these things often do. But so yeah, when did you guys first see this story? And being the guest, obviously, I'm gonna come to you first on this one, Phil. When did you first experience? Was it as broadcast?
As broadcast, yeah, as broadcast. I think Part 1 I saw because of the times and whatever. At various times, because we rented our TV back then, we'd have for 6 months we'd have a colour TV, and then if my dad couldn't afford the colour license, we'd go back to black and white. So this happened quite a lot during the 70s, and my grandparents, I think, had colour TV before we did. So I remember going. I'm pretty sure I saw episode 1 of Genesis of the Daleks at my grandparents' house in colour, and then Part 2 at home in black and white.
You're like, I want to go back to Grand's.
But that was the way it is. But I did audio record most of it back at the time, as well. I only just started taping with Part 1 of Ark in Space, but I didn't keep them all. I sort of went over ones with later stories and stuff like that. But Genesis, I remember part 3, I never saw. In fact, I probably didn't see that until it came out either on video. It might have been until it came out on video, because I think it came out on video before it went on UK Gold. But because we went to see a panto or something as a family, and I can remember which episodes of Doctor Who I missed. For various things like going to a panto or something like that, or going fireworks and stuff like that. So I know I definitely didn't see. I missed part 3 on broadcast, and then recorded the rest of it. But yeah, that was a great story.
Nice.
It always was.
What about you, Mike? When was your first experience with this one?
In short, it was on DVD. And it was the same exact version that you've just said, with the sticker on going, this is voted number 1, because at the time it was of all of the Doctor Who stories. And I'm sure I've said this before, but the reason was that, as you know, I'm kind of more of a child of the wilderness years. Not quite. I was born in 82, but we never really watched Doctor Who as a child growing up, because obviously I didn't have control of the TV between the ages of like 0 and 9. So I hadn't seen a lot of that stuff. And then I remember I got into sort of sci-fi via Star Trek and decided to check out Doctor Who. And so my first exposure was a repeat of The Ark in Space and the TV movie, which I saw live and got excited about, thinking it would herald a new series, which it then didn't. So when that didn't happen, I remember kind of, Doctor Who kind of went onto the back burner for a while until around just before the series came back, which would have been around the 40th anniversary, as you said, when Scream of the Shulker was released and everything. And I thought, before this comes back, I'm going to do my research and try and get into this Doctor Who thing that I've seen so much about. I mean, being British, it's part of our cultural heritage. We all know who the Daleks are. We know who Davros is. We probably know K9, and we definitely know Tom Baker's 4th Doctor and such. So I had a working knowledge, shall we say. Decided, being the most iconic part of the show, that I would collect the DVDs that only were Dalek and Cybermen episodes first. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start somewhere. Why not start with those? Everybody says they're the most iconic things, and they're the ones that interest me the most from my kind of geeky perspective. So I think the very first 2 DVDs I ever bought were Genesis of the Daleks and Earthshock. And I wasn't super impressed by them at the time, because I think my problem was they're so out of order and they so rely on previous knowledge of those monsters and the characters involved in the story and everything. So It didn't have the impact. I think so, because it was just kind of like I didn't know who. I hadn't seen the previous Dalek episodes, so I vaguely knew what they looked like and what they were meant to be and stuff, but I didn't quite get the gravitas of like, oh, should I stop them? They're the most evil thing in the universe, because this was the first thing I'd ever really seen. And like DK, I think I was kind of a bit ignorant of the whole Nazi allegory thing. Although looking back now, it makes me think, how blind can you possibly be when it's right there in front of you, and not just because Guy Siner's in this and he was in Hello, Hello. Yeah, I don't know. Not that I disliked the episodes, but I was like, that's the greatest that this show has to offer. Okay. I was expecting a little bit more. And then, as you say, when you view it again in context, it's very different. And I've seen it multiple times since. It's obviously, my opinion has improved. As you know from earlier, it's not my favorite of the classic Who run, but I think it's very good.
But I would have thought Genesis was actually a very good starting off point, considering it is the Genesis. But actually, you don't really need to know what the Daleks are before watching it. The Daleks don't lead the narrative in any way until the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
It's actually one of the questions I was going to ask after we'd given his conclusion, but seeing as it even kind of stumbled on it, Mike, I was going to say, I mean, if you were introducing the show to someone, is this something that you recommend, or do you think it's one of those where you need to feel kind of the full events? You need to feel the history between the protagonist and the Daleks and letting the threat build up before you do this one? Or do you think straight in?
I think, to your point, I'm not saying it's kind of a bad idea to have started with this in terms of Dalek episodes. Part of it is that maybe I should have started at the beginning of season 12, because then I would also have had the narrative through line and know who these characters are and kind of know their relationships to each other. Whereas there's not really, to be fair to the episode, there's not a lot of time for the characters to, show you what they mean to each other or to bond and that. And like, Sarah's separated from them for most of the narrative and doing her own thing, which is cool because Liz Sladen gets to show how kick-ass she is, and it's awesome. But like I said, I didn't really know what relation these people were to each other. And I do think there is bits of the narrative that kind of, you do kind of need to know the impact of what the Daleks are, because yes, it's the Genesis, but it also, the episode literally starts with the Time Lords saying to the Doctor, we're sending you on a mission to, deal with these guys in the cradle because they're such a huge frigging problem and they're so dramatically. And so that huge kind of moment at the end where it's like, oh, do I have the right? And then Sarah Jane's insisting, it's the Daleks, the most evil things. And I'm like, well, what have they done? I haven't seen any of these. And similarly, the scene when he's like, how did you defeat the Daleks in the past, Doctor? And I'm like, yeah, good question. How did you do that? Because it means nothing to me. So, but yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily start with this in those cases. I'd say maybe start with another Dalek story, like the origin, and see the same with Series 12. Start from the beginning of this season, or at least the arc in space, because Robot's a bit of a tough one. So
what about you, Phil? Do you think you're perfectly fine to start with this one, or do you think
it depends on the history? I mean, I don't think it's one I would say to introduce somebody who's never watched Doctor Who before necessarily. There are other stories, if you're trying to introduce classic to somebody who's never seen an episode of Classic Who before, you wouldn't go for a 6-part story, I don't think. You'd go for something like a 4-parter, I think. I mean, I would probably go for. Depends on whether we're just talking Daleks. It's harder with Daleks because not all of those 4-part stories are amazing. If you were going to do a 4-part story and introduce Daleks, I'd go to Remembrance probably, actually, just because it's action packed. Yes, there's a lot of backstory, but you don't need backstory to watch. You didn't need backstory to watch The Well. You didn't need to have seen Midnight. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yes, you can come back to that later. You can, if it inspires you to go back and find out, what was all that about?
Yeah.
Then fine, But I don't think that gets in the way of the story, because the story, it's a 6-part story. So yes, so there's padding sequences. There's the stuff in the cave with the clams and so on. But again, a 4-year-old or 5-year-old watching that may well have been scared of the giant clams.
I do think as well that, I mean, it's a me problem. I'm not criticizing the episode for the way that I kind of came to it.
No,
but
sure.
I think it's also just because I was so unused to the pace of classic Doctor Who, because like I said, I came off the back of Star Trek and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and all these things that were 45 minutes breezy straight in and out, and then as you say, coming into a 6-25-minute episode thing is kind of like there's an awful lot of
it's a completely different kind of production, let alone form of storytelling,
exactly.
But so you've got to be prepared for that.
I don't think I really was, but I think that was a problem with both of the things that I watched. It was the same with Earthshock, was that kind of my kind of I don't want to say critical brain, but the part of me that's always looking at these things was like, this could have been edited down. This could have been much shorter. Probably people would say that's blasphemy, a lot of the classic Who fans, but I think certainly in the case of 6-parters, I don't think there's ever any justification for 6 parts. And I stand by that when it comes to the entirety of the classic era. I think if you go above 4 parts, you're padding, basically.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily agree. Yes, there are some stories which obviously do lag, but also you have to remember that these weren't meant to be seen in one go. Fans these days will watch, well, I will too, but they were broadcast once a week.
Yeah. No, that's true, and
they weren't meant to be seen as a 2.5-hour binging session. They weren't ever meant. They were never designed to be seen like that. Which is why when they did repeat Genesis the first time, it was edited down to 85 minutes.
Exactly.
It's exactly for that reason, which is what they're actually doing with the colorized versions of black and white stories now. That's exactly what they're doing. They're taking something that they can't, and black and white is another barrier, let alone the pacing and stuff.
Well, we'll get into the episode itself, and we'll begin with the writing of the episode. And yeah,
Sure.
have you got any notes on that one, Mike?
I do, yeah. Let me just see if I can find them. So, just a little few sort of bits of behind-the-scenes information. Firstly, the Thal soldiers were originally supposed to be boys, aged 15 or 16, to illustrate the youth of those fighting in the war. This was later changed to make them appear more mature, but you can still... There is one line of dialogue, I think, where they still refer to them as boys fighting the war, which obviously wasn't quite excised. The character of Davros was designed by Nation to have created the Daleks in his image, and to also be a spokesperson for the Daleks, as Nation felt it was boring listening to Daleks giving speeches. Nation, who grew up during World War II, intentionally based the Daleks on the Nazis, and this episode contains many deliberate parallels. The Carleds dress in uniforms reminiscent of Nazis and display quote-unquote fascist salutes, or as I call it, the Elon Musk. The Carleds look to keep their race pure by banishing the Thals and Mutos. Cast and crew described it as a warning to the world about the dangers of allowing authoritarianism to take over. I can't imagine that ever happening these days. Davros has been likened to Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler several times, while physical comparisons have also been drawn between the appearance of Nyder and SS Chief Heinrich Himmler. Aside from the resemblance, both wear similar uniforms and spectacles. As production of the third episode began, the producers decided to play down some of the Nazi symbolism, and they took away Nyder's Iron Cross. It does briefly reappear, though, in a later scene that was filmed in the first recording block. Genesis is the first example in the history of Doctor Who of outright revisionism. The creation story of the Daleks is very different from the one established in the episodes The Daleks in 63, where it was said that they evolved from creatures known as Dals, who were once similar to the Thals. Here, the Dals from the original story are changed to Carleds. I do think that's a change that they did in the colorized edited version, actually. They kind of made them back to being Carleds again to fit better with this, but again, we digress. The Dals were once similar to the Thals. Here, the Dals are changed to Carleds, as I said. The official Doctor Who and the Daleks book, co-authored by Terry Nation, suggested that the Daleks took place during the Daleks' 1,000-year hibernation following Genesis, and that the Daleks seen in that story were the descendants of Carled mutants who had sought refuge in the destroyed Carled city and discovered Davros' prototypes and notes. Yeah, I think an awful lot of moving some goalposts to justify your retcon there, Terry, but, you know, I appreciate it. Your attempt. And yeah, that's what I've got on the writing for now.
There's a couple of things there. Nation didn't. I mean, the original Daleks were based on the Nazis, so that those allusions were there right from 1963.
Of course,
you know, dislike of the unlike. So that wasn't anything unusual. That was just picking up what he'd originally done, because that's really what they were: dislike of the unlike. They were based on the Nazis anyway. The way that it looked in Genesis was down to Hinchcliffe and Holmes and David Maloney, especially. I think he was the one that encouraged the designer, the costume designer, and whatever, to go for it. And I think, actually, I'm not sure Hinchcliffe was as involved, because he wouldn't be anyway as producer with every costume, because he was the one, I think, that got a bit anxious when he saw what David Maloney was doing.
Right, yeah.
And the Iron Cross, I think, went because of Hinchcliffe, because I don't think he'd spotted it in the first studio block. And then it disappeared because I think he saw it was one step too far. I'm pretty sure that was down to Hinchcliffe. So yeah, and obviously, you know, they picked up on it because it was in there already. That's what the Daleks were, Nazis. And so Maloney just encouraged that, and they just took it further and further with the salutes. That's, you know, that's a directorial choice, you know, getting the actors, the way they move and block and everything else. That was down to him.
With regards to the writing, I mean, do you guys have any particular feelings on this? You think it's a competent story? You think it's one of the best? Or, you know, is there anything about this that particularly stands out for you?
I'll let Phil go.
Go on, sorry, you carry on.
No, I was going to say I'll let you go first, Phil.
All right. Give your thoughts. Well, I mean, I mean, it's very difficult to know how much of Nation remains in those scripts, but you can tell that Bob Holmes is all over it. Clearly, Nation created the characters and stuff like that, and probably, you know, it's very hard to know what percentage it is. It's probably maybe it's 60% Nation and 40% HoMs, but I suspect the most powerful stuff is HoMs, or making it more powerful, shall we say? But yeah, I mean, it's a great story, and Davros is the linchpin of it. Davros dominates the entire proceedings, and that's partly that's partly the writing, but it's also, as you said earlier, about Michael Wisher completely committing to that part, and you know, rehearsing with a paper bag over his head with a hole for his a hole for his mouth so he could have a fag in the breaks and stuff, you know. But it's such a controlled, contained performance then the megalomania bursts out at certain times. It's a chilling performance, which is why, you know, nobody imagined that Davros would come back. He's effectively killed off. But that changes Dalek stories from then onwards until the new series.
I was going to ask both
Davros,
of you.
Because as you say, Daleks aren't great conversationalists, and even Nation realised that.
Yeah, I was going to ask both of you with regards to Davros. I mean, it's obviously he's the standout in this story. He's kind of been a little done to death, in my opinion, since then. I'm just wondering. Obviously, you know, they're going to bring back things that are popular, but would you have liked this to have been a one and done for the character? And I'm throwing this to either of you. And B, if it was a one and done, do you think he would still be as iconic as he is, but without those follow-up appearances?
I just think it was a fantastic performance and an unforgettable performance, you know, because he committed to it. He is that character, and he's there, you know, and he's not doing anything. It's a man inside a mask, and the mask is part of that equation as well, because it's a superb mask. Although it doesn't in any way kind of suggest that Davros is actually from Skaro, because he has a bigger head than everyone else. You know, like you say, it was kind of based on the Mekon. And, you know, John Friedlander, who sculpted that, deserves a mention. But he's got a much more bulbous head and skull. But I think it's like anything in Doctor Who. If it's successful, someone at some point in the future is going to look back and think, "Oh, let's bring that back. Let's bring him back."
Yeah. What do you think?
And he becomes quite a different character, because obviously in Genesis he doesn't even know of the existence of other people on other planets. You know, it's quite an insular thing, because it obviously wasn't written as a character to continue. It was really only written for that story, and then they picked it up in Destiny, and it went on from there. But I don't think even the repeat appearances diminish what Wisher did. It's just a shame that Wisher wasn't able to come back.
Yeah. What do you think, Mike? You've been kind of quiet.
Yeah, just waiting to kind of try. I mean, I've got lots of thoughts on it, but I'll try and keep them concise, because I could be here for hours talking about Genesis. But I think your question about would Davros be iconic, I think he still would, were the appearance is not there, because I think, as we mentioned, whether it be the John Friedlander mask or the idea, kind of fun, kind of cool idea of, you know, him being half Dalek and the good concept of being in a Dalek base unit, I think would always have been visually striking. And I think, weirdly, we as a society have this weird fascination with people that are disfigured, particularly like in fiction. So I think we've always been fascinated by like Darth Vader or Two-Face. And I think Davros has a bit of that. because you can kind of like, I never assumed, unlike Phil, that it was an alien thing. I just thought, oh, this guy's been in a horrible accident and is cyborg now. He is as he'll be more machine now than man or whatever. So that's kind of how I read the character that way. And I do think if by the way, if you like this story and you kind of are interested in the backstory of Davros, I think the Big Finish play Davros is phenomenal. Some of the best stuff as well for going into what the character's backstory is and that of the planet and everything. Not just about how he ended up in the kind of life support unit and stuff, but where his motivation comes from. And yeah, anyway, but that's a different thing for a different day. But to your other point, like, yeah, I get that Davros's appearances weren't like every other week, but it was kind of sucky to me that it was every time the Daleks appeared again in the classic series, he had to be there. And I get the justification being that Daleks, they don't talk very well, and it's not great to try and give them long monologues or whatever. But for me, I think this is the start of Davros overshadowing the Daleks. And that's another sort of slight issue that I have with this story, is that the Daleks really don't feature all that much. It's a Davros story with a couple of Daleks that do something, and then at the very end they turn on him, which comes out of seemingly nowhere because they haven't had much to do for the rest of the story, and it almost doesn't seem interested. It's like, well, we're just, they're battle tanks and whatever else, and we'll deal with that later. Which is why I think I much prefer some of the earlier Dalek stories where they are it. And it's the same kind of, it's another, crossing the geeky streams, but it's the same issue I have with the Borg Queen in Star Trek. Like, the Borg were a lot scarier when they were a collective unit that didn't have a single leader that could be manipulated and do all the talking for them. And as soon as you introduce that, it's kind of like, oh, you've kind of nerfed them a bit for me. So I think that's a little bit the case with the Daleks as well.
Fair enough.
Although I do love Davros, I have to say, I'm not like I would get rid of the character, but I think they did the right thing in the new series by having him appear for certain, which I would definitely do, but not have him in every Dalek story.
Yeah. So, with regards to the writing for this one, what are your thoughts on this? Any particular highlights?
The highlights are obvious, isn't it? It's Davros's kind of maniacal rants. So it's the scene kind of, would you play God? Would you destroy life if you had that power in your fingertips or whatever? It's just such a well-performed scene and well-written. And then obviously the kind of, do I have the right scene at the kind of part 5, part 6 cliffhanger moment with Tom Baker, which really is really well played. And it's so thought-provoking. It can't be underplayed how that is. It is, yes, it's not unique. It's the whole, if you had a time machine, would you go back and kill Hitler kind of idea? But it's played so well here. And, there's a reason why Stephen Moffat picked that up and ran with it when it came to The Magician's Apprentice and actually discovering Davros as a young boy. I think it works really well. And I do like that there's a lot of things in here that are not black and white, if that makes sense. So the Doctor, I like that he agonizes over this because it is more of a moral decision, and he does it does deserve at least that pause. And like a lot of people, I kind of feel like it's a bit of a cop-out that it ends up happening anyway with, assistance from a Dalek. Yeah. But whatever, I kind of get you have to do that. But even, like, not related to that big moment, but other things that I like that are not black and white is that, like, you never find out really what causes the Carleds and Thals to be at war, other than they just have been for so long. And neither side is particularly portrayed as better than the other. Like, the Thals are building a rocket that would obliterate the Carleds just the same. And, they both have terrible opinion of Mutos, who are considered, second-class citizens, expendable labor. So there really isn't, like, that delineation that you might expect of, like, well, the ones that look like the Nazis are the bad guys, so the other ones have to be the good guys. It's like, no, there's no good guys in war. It's bad guys and worse guys.
Yeah. When you look at the earlier story, it's kind of the Dalek's evil, Thal's nice.
Yeah.
And when you see him in this, it's everyone's just as bad as each other, basically.
Although, of course, in the Daleks, the Thals do say, we were the warriors once.
Yeah.
So, that group of Thals we meet were pacifists who didn't want to fight, but that was in the far, far future.
Yeah.
So, and they probably wouldn't have lasted very long anyway.
What I do like about this story is, especially, when you know where it's going, it has that oppressive atmosphere all the way through. There is something dark and foreboding, and yes, you're talking about the creation of Daleks, so you kind of know, but it keeps that tone constant throughout. And as a result, I find, and again, it's not just the writing; it's down to the direction. But there's a tension there. There's a palpable tension that all the way through. Any moment you're waiting for the proverbial to hit the fan, and I like that about this one. And I just wondered what you guys thought to the tone of it.
Oh, it's dark, and also, I mean, watching it again, really just earlier on today, you can kind of see why Mary Whitehouse got in such a tiz. Because, this was going out, I can't remember what time it was, but it was between 5 and 6 p.m. It may have been 6:15 on a Saturday night. And it starts off and it's like a World War I film.
Yeah.
It's people and soldiers getting gunned down in cold blood. You don't even know who's firing at them, but they just in slow motion. I mean, that's pure David Maloney, and he repeated similar things in Deadly Assassin. Same quarry, perhaps. But, it is quite strong. It's deliberately strong. And the season had already been quite strong, in terms of that psychological kind of terror. But, yes, it's strong. But it's great. That's what people grew to love about those Hinchcliffe years, was just how strong and dark, and sometimes brutal they could be. Certainly scary. I think if you're thinking that it's like I said, I can't remember whether it was 5:50 or whenever it was on, but you're going to have a whole mix of ages watching at that time of night after the football results or Basil Brush. You're still going to have kiddies watching it. Quite strong and scary for kids, for 8, 9 years old above. Okay, but I know there's no blood or anything like that, but it's played for real.
Yeah,
it's played for real.
Very
the Doctor
vicious.
steps on a landmine, obviously, which Moffat again reused. He's obviously a bit obsessed with Genesis and trying to reuse it.
That was something I noted though, because I said it's kind of funny how they breeze through the plot of Boom in 2 minutes in episode 1. I do wonder if Moffat was sitting there and was like,
"Yeah, but that's because that's the story it's telling, is it? It's just."
That's not a criticism. It's more that I'm just kind of like, I wonder if Moffat was watching this and was like, I could stretch this to 45 minutes.
Well, that was the base. That was the original. That was just the idea, wasn't it? Of the Doctor putting his foot on a bomb and that on a landmine. But it was kind of like the inspiration for it, I think. But no, I mean, it's also just, I think that probably comes from Terry Nation, just the idea of the Doctor being sent on a mission by the Time Lords. Yeah. Well, that hasn't happened for a while. That's a Pertwee thing. So, there are obviously kind of still ghosts of the Barry Letts era. The Time Lord sending the Doctor on a mission, and it happens again in Brain of Morbius. And that's kind of the last we hear of it. But it's an interesting little hangover, isn't it? From of the Time Lords.
What do you think, Mike? As regards to the tone of the piece.
The tone. Yeah. I mean, again, that's kind of one of the things I like about it, is that it's like Phil said, it's not that it's full of blood and gore and grotesque, and I don't particularly put a lot of stock in Mary Whitehouse's BS, to be honest, but it is nice that it's uncompromising in the kind of the grimness of war. I mean, these people are at war, and it's kind of like, they're propping up corpses, even they've got a role to play. It's kind of like, that's dark.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway,
So I mean, obviously that'll take us next to the direction. So have you got anything on that?
Let me just see. I think I very briefly do. Yes. David Maloney was pleased to have a story he could sink his teeth into. The move during that era was towards being frightening and violent, and I pushed that and actively participated in it. In a 2006 interview, Terrence Dicks said he doesn't believe the story would have been much different if he and Letts had still been in charge, though he remarked he would have added some lighter moments to soften the grim tone. Director Maloney stated the images of war at the beginning were intended to create atmosphere, and he had no intention of losing the younger audience. And finally, Hinchcliffe wanted the Daleks to appear more powerful and intended to achieve this through low angles and lighting. Duncan Brown was responsible for studio lighting, used colors and dark lighting to make the Daleks seem as if they were emerging from the shadows and to suggest rather than show the world created to viewers, which I absolutely love. I have to say the direction here is fantastic. Everything from the decision to make the Daleks like gunmetal grey to the way they filmed and the way they kind of seem powerful and menacing. You know, contrary to what I said earlier, perhaps because they don't get that much to do. So when they do appear, it's kind of like, oh, the big bad is here kind of thing. So yeah, I kind of like all that stuff with the direction.
Yeah, but I think it's you know, Maloney does some good stuff with this one. What about you, Phil?
Sure.
Oh yeah, well, Maloney was one of the best directors the classic series ever had, and he was always going for the drama, and you know, and yes, that I mean, most of his stories have violence in them.
Yeah.
And I think as he said, you know, that whole opening sequence was probably purely him. I don't think that was all scripted, you know.
No, it wasn't. It was Maloney who decided to do it for sure. Definitely.
That's right, you know, and certainly to make it look, you know, like a First World War battleground, and all of that. So yeah. I mean, he was a great director, and it is, and the, you know, and that comes through. You know, you talk about the lighting. You know, yes, the lighting is crucial. You know, yes, we know that we're in studios and stuff like that inside, but we are in a base. I think the only studio that doesn't really quite work is the Foul City. That strange sort of beigey orange with white pillars. That doesn't quite give any sort of sense of the sort of place it is. I know we don't see it very much, but when we do see it, it doesn't really convince us anywhere.
I think they're never convincing anyway, is it? I mean, like with most cities in Doctor Who, it's basically 2 corridors.
Yeah,
It's
and
only a
obviously
city,
we're only there for a very short time. But it doesn't really convince on screen. Whereas I think, you know, the corridors in the Khaled City are, it's very monochromatic, actually. There's very little colour. It's black and white costumes, and then in the Foul City, they're all in green with a bit of yellow. So that, yeah, there's a stylized difference between the two races, clearly. Although they do keep on with the blonde, because quite a lot of the guys are either bleached their hair or are blonde on the Foul side of it. So they have obviously kept that, tried to keep him with the blonde aesthetic from Planet of the Daleks.
Yeah, I guess.
But even though they've got driving guns.
Well, that's one of the other things I like, is the idea that the war's been going on so long, and that they're fighting equally with like laser pistols and rifles. You know,
absolutely.
There's not one period,
and that's an interesting thing—a war of attrition. You know, backwards. I mean, it's nothing like it would have been under Barry Letts and Terence Dix. I'm sorry. I mean, that was an easy thing, I'm sure, for Terence to say in retrospect later on. But there's no way Barry would have allowed that kind of grittiness on screen. And there'd have been a lot more CSO.
I do think if I can quickly sort of give a few examples, though, I think it's unfair to call it grim and say there's no funny moments, because there's some things I really laugh at here. Whether there are. The cheesy stuff about
there.
The Doctor having like really massive pockets, or just the way he's like nonchalantly not accepting being bullied by people, and he just stands up, and you know, I can't think of any other examples off the top of my head, but there's so many like little humorous asides and moments like that, and it's kind of
there's character moments, aren't they? With Sarah and Harry, and you know, yes, there are. There's a bit where Sarah pulls a face at a foul guard after pushing through the door. But those are little character moments.
I do love the little, you know, I enjoy interrogation. Yes, you look the type.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, there's witticisms in the script. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are. But I think that's because the overall tone is so dark.
That was the other one I wanted to mention, because it's such a good, I mean, it's kind of into the acting, but it's so great the way that Tom Baker, just with no kind of airs or graces whatsoever, just walks up and goes, "Excuse me, can you help me? I'm a spy."
Yeah.
You've just hilarious.
You've just hit on my favourite. Out of everything, out of all the lines, all the quotable dialogue in this, that is my favourite line. I can remember it from the LP, but just to see Tom's beaming face when he delivers it, I just think it's chef's kiss.
That is so Fourth Doctor as well, though. He's like, I haven't got time to piss about. I'm a spy. What?
Yeah. So,
Well,
I mean,
you know, and this was only his 5th story.
It brings us up kind of to the production design. I mean, we have touched upon acting. We've touched upon Wisher. We've touched upon Baker. Do either of you have any standout performances other than those two? And do you have any notes with regards to the acting, Mike?
Let me just see. I think, first of all, yes, I think everybody's good. I think, like I said, Guy Siner, star of Leprechaun in Space, is actually pretty good, doing his pre-Hello bit. Peter Miles as Snyder, I think, is iconic for a reason. I can't add to what was already been said about Wisher. Ian Marter, I think, gets to do the kind of dashing hero thing that they used to give to William Russell, which I can kind of see why that character was phased out, because Tom Baker's more than capable of doing that himself. I like the Mutos. I like that they're the kind of more moral side of things, and they kind of don't want to destroy things different to them, and I think that's played well. Obviously, I think Liz Sladen kicks ass. She gets quite a lot of stuff to do because she's the one left on her own and still gets to not be the damsel in distress for most of that thing as well. And I just think, I can't remember the actor's name, but the character of Ronson, I think, was a little bit Captain Exposition.
James Garber.
Right.
James Garber. Oh, yeah, but he's got a great voice. And, and he is, and actually, go on, sorry, Andy, I'll let you finish.
No, I was just going to say, but it just feels like there's an awful lot of, as you know, Davros, we have done, and it's like, this is for the audience, disguise it better.
Oh, that's script. That's down to scripting.
Oh, yeah, it's not the actor's fault. Absolutely, that was my point. I just think, yeah. I have one thing quickly about the acting, if I may. 2 children visiting the BBC studios were scared by Michael Wisher in costume. They thought he was a statue, and when sitting in Davros's Dalek-like base, Wisher wore knee pads and a kilt because trousers were too uncomfortable. So picture that next time you think he's intimidating. Very much Peter Cushing.
That's the Peter Cushing in fluffy slippers moment. And I'm not going to be able to watch this now.
Absolutely. And as we said, to prepare during rehearsals, Wisher acted in a wheelchair with a paper bag over his head that had slits cut out for his eyes so he could get used to the disorienting situation and learn how to express himself without using his face, which I think is really good. And as Phil alluded to earlier, Wisher was a heavy smoker, and he did put 2 holes in the top of the bag so he could smoke underneath it in rehearsals, which I think Tom Baker has made lots of reference to coming appearing like a chimney. And that's about all I have. Other than to say that, once again, kudos to that performance between Tom Baker and Michael Wisher when they're in the scene together. Some of the best acting in Doctor Who, period. I think it's so good.
I think it's some of the best acting on TV, period. I think it's
exactly.
really good. And as you say, Sladen kicks ass. And I've always got love for Ian Marter as Harry. So, Phil, any? I mean, you've talked about Wisher. We've talked about Tom Baker. Is anybody else that you felt had a particular standout moment in this?
Well, it's a very strong cast, isn't it? Really. I mean, Peter Miles is he's the true Nazi.
Yeah.
In this, he is the epitome, and he looks kind of like a German officer anyway. Just the way that he behaves, his clip delivery. And stuff like that. Yeah, it's a fantastic performance. Probably the best it's probably the best performance of his various characters in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
The others were kind of always got rather angry and went off their heads a bit. But so he's very good. Garman is also a rather interesting character too. Nice again. There's a lot of really good voices in this.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about the writing, direction, acting. It brings us to production design and FX. And have you got anything on this, Mike?
Very briefly, it's not really anything huge. I just wanted to add that some of the Thal guns were reused props from the first Doctor serial Galaxy 4. The creature Harry and the Doctor glimpse at the end of Part 2 was mainly a reused Ice Warrior costume. And the Thal rocket ship was a reused model from the Ambassadors of Death. And the only note I have made about this is Davros's chair back looks like it's giving you the finger, which I mentioned earlier,
Yes.
which I cannot not see anytime he's like shot from the back. I'm just like, you guys didn't consider the way this looks.
Thanks to you, Mike. Not only can I just see him flipping the bird every time he's got it back to me, but now whenever he's facing forwards, he's flashing his junk because he's got a kilt on. But yeah, I do think that production design wise, it's got a certain look about it that it's very indicative of the period. Obviously, it might not have dated to special effects these days, but I just think it's got a charm about it and a grittiness that it helps immensely with regards to the special effects with regards to this. And it reminds me, which is very, I don't know, it's very apropos. It reminds me very much with that BBC kind of production style of the TV movie that we were talking about the other day, Mike, Threads. It's got that kind of vibe to it. And I think that helps this story immensely. So yeah, that's Davros still looks brilliant to me. I think it was a masterstroke. The prosthetics, the masks. I do like that they made the Daleks a gunmetal grey. It fits in with the look of the thing. So yeah, that's pretty much all the notes I've got with regards to that. But yeah, so what about you guys? Do you have anything with regards to the production design or the FX on this one?
No, I gave you mine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Phil.
I mean, it's a base, isn't it? So I think David Spode was the production design, was the designer, and yeah, I mean, I think it does what it needs to do. It's kind of futuristic, but quite bare and sparse. All the sets are quite sparse. It's really just walls with black and silver. They are quite functional.
Yeah, it's just like a utilitarian.
Some nice sliding doors. There are some nice little features, and the platform lift. The little platform lift that ties the two together to the location, and things like that. But yeah, I mean, that's what the script kind of called for.
Yeah,
it's a military. It's a kind of militaristic base. So there's no frippery. I'm not convinced by the safe. I like the fact with the eye with the lightning coming out of it as the kind of logo sort of design for the for the Khalid militia, but that doesn't convince as a safe door. It's a little bit of ply. It's very thin.
I will say I was impressed with the scaffolding next to
that is
they did really create the impression of height with that one, I think.
And must have been quite difficult because, well, clearly it's you would think if they were going to design a scaffolding, they would design a scaffolding that actors could actually climb.
Yeah.
But Liz Sladen was only about 5'5" or something like that. She was quite tiny. It's quite interesting because the gap between those bars is a big stretch for anybody. Yeah. And I suppose that's a good bit of design in terms of that it's not built for an actor. It's built to, you've got to struggle to get up that.
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't have been very high. She wouldn't have had far to fall and whatever. But, I would have thought clambering up that at speed, which is what they're trying to do, and with the soldiers that follow them, would have been quite a task.
Can I quickly just interject as well?
There's a good 3 foot gap between each bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. While we're on the subject, I have to say, because I forgot to mention it in the kind of writing kind of thing, that I really resent that cliffhanger, which stops on the freeze frame of Sarah Jane falling as if it's something really important. And then when it picks up, it's just like, don't worry, she didn't fall that far.
Oh,
it's very much Annie Wilkes standing up in a cinema going, that's not what cockadoodie happened.
But actually, going back, the cliffhangers for this story are all really strong.
Yes.
Yeah, and even if they did shuffle cliffhangers around, because of running time and stuff, or they move bits around, they're all really strong cliffhangers and all very different.
Yeah, they are. There are some really good ones in this one. So, Yeah, which I mean brings us finally to sound design and music. And have you got anything for this, Mike?
Nope, literally just one note, which is to say that I like that, given that they knew their limitations, that we have the horrible sound of the Dalek mutants, because we can't really see them and it doesn't look so convincing, but my word, the sound sells that these are monstrous beasties.
Yes. It really does make you go, oh, what's on the other side of that door?
Yeah.
So
that was it.
Yeah, I think the music's competent. I mean, it's pretty standard for the season, but I do think it serves the story well. There's nothing that stands out particularly, but yeah. What about you, Phil? Anything on this?
Oh, I really like Dudley Simpson's score. It's quite different from some of the other ones, really, because it is much more kind of, there is that, I'm not musical at all, but that sort of the sounds that he has when the Daleks appear. There's like a crash, like a drum crash or a cymbal crash or something when the first one appears, without its gun, and then there's the kind of percussive sound that happens in their theme when they reappear more later. But there is a soundscape to it as well, sound effects, which when I rewatched it earlier, there's sound effects in the background of the whole base of the bunker. And it just lends a quality to it. It's not even quite high in the mix. It's very low level, but it's there all the same. It's not just an empty room.
I think this is one of those stories when you can look at it and genuinely think there's not one department that kind of dropped the ball on this one. And I think that's why it comes across as one of the best. So I'm going to take us forward and we'll come to our thoughts in a moment. But I understand if we're going to be opening the Subwave network, Mike, you've got some audience response for this one.
I'm transferring the Subwave network.
I do, yeah. We got a fair bit of response, obviously, as you would expect for Genesis of the Daleks. Bit more mixed than you might expect. I don't think there was any outright hatred, but just to go over to give you this. From our Discord, Liam says 3 out of 5. I honestly think it is extremely poorly paced. I love individual moments, but getting to them is a slog. Let's see. Over on Facebook, from Dalek Earth Force, Dev Sonar says, my reaction was stop blabbering and get on with it. Ian Sack says at least 4.5 out of 5. Michael Wisher was one of the greatest Doctor Who villains ever. The way he can sound calm and reasonable before going off on a rant in particular, I agree. To the extent they had to bring him back and make every subsequent Dalek story into a Davros story. The Doctor actually chose to destroy the Daleks. He just hesitated, finger on the button, so to speak, for a bit, then was told the action would be unnecessary, so he didn't do it. When it turned out it was necessary, he went back to do it, even though a Dalek accidentally ended up doing it instead. Fair enough. Wendy Smythe just says 5 stars. From Daleks Rule Supreme group, Ian Pierce says 6 out of 5. Doc and Alexandra loosely say 5. Lawrence Wilson says it's good, but I think it's overrated, to be honest. Dalek Earth Force again, Morgan Firebureau Dean says 20 out of 5. Amazing story from start to finish. George M. Howard says, without a doubt, one of the greatest Doctor Who stories of all time. I'd give it 5 out of 5 any day. Nick Dello says, as the Doctor continuously rewrites history and rewrites our future, I don't really understand why he was so concerned about blowing up the Dalek incubator room. However, he made the right choice in that he didn't go ahead with the destruction for the very reasons he stated in the episode, but the Daleks did the work for him, which, to be honest, was a bit of a cop-out by Terry Nation. But such a brilliant story, one that holds up today. Indeed, the fascist, nihilistic plot probably resonates more today than it did in 1975, sadly. John Lloyd says 200 gazillion out of 5. Joe Skelly says the best ever Doctor Who story made. Sam Bell says this was arguably my introduction to Doctor Who. It was my first story. Tom Baker was my first Doctor. Sarah Jane was my first companion. The Daleks and Davros were my first monsters. But most importantly, it was the story that made me become a fan of the series as a whole. 5 out of 5. Steve Hartley says 5 without question. Helen Elizabeth Alice Payne says 5. Philip Shaw says 7. Insectio Lads Tips and Tricks says 5 stars. For an alien, it was a very human moment. Diane Powell says it's in my top 5, I reckon. Mark Carter says 4.5 out of 5. There are other stories that come close. I especially like Talons of Weng Chiang, though it doesn't have the same big issues. Pyramids of Mars, Seeds of Doom, Horror of Fang Rock are others. One that seems appropriate for today's world is The Sunmakers. Wow, a lot of episodes dropped there. Dave F. Kent says magnificent episode, 5 out of 5. Dennis V. Willis says easily 5 stars. Let's see. Doctor Who, the Tom Baker Years group now. Steve Hutton says 5 stars and an extra star for the giant clam. I personally take one off, but okay. Carrie Thompson says the best. Ian Kendall says 10 out of 5. Jason Blanchflower says 5 stars, best story ever. And that's the feedback I have.
Nice one. So, yeah, all fairly strong. Couple of dissenting voices there, but all fairly strong love for this one. So we'll get to our final thoughts in a moment, but first, as is usual, we'll come to our favourite character, moment, and line. So yeah, I'll come to you first on this one, Phil. Who's your favourite character in this story?
Well, it's got to be Davros.
Fair enough. Down to Wish's performance, yeah?
Well, the whole thing. Yeah. I mean, it's a combination of factors, isn't it? The actor's only as good as the script he's given. In many respects, you know, it's the dialogue, it's the character, and it's his interpretation and performance. So, combined with how he looks, it's everything meshes together perfectly.
Cool.
Which doesn't happen often in Doctor Who. Usually, one of those ingredients is always slightly off.
But this time they all come together.
But this time they all come together and they all work seamlessly, and which is why we still talk about Davros now, and it's you know, and it's why he's come back, you know, and been reimagined in the new series. Not many old monsters have, old villains have, but you know, there's a reason.
True. And do you have a favourite moment from the story or scene?
I really, you know, I mean, there's lots, isn't there? One thing I really like is the scene with Davros and Nyder, where Nyder kind of loses it. He starts to panic for the first time that everyone's taking, you know, that the rebels are taking over and blah, 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 and Davros is just still sort of thrumming his finger on his control panel and, you know, leave it to me. Kind of thing. That's not what he says, but you know, it's just the stillness, and it's really darkly lit. I think
those are some of the best things of Davros. I think it's like as much as the shouty things are really powerful.
The stillness,
it's
stillness.
Chilling,
that's what's really sinister. Is the fact that he's so still.
I love that scene when he's gonna get like effectively, you know, the equivalent of Hans Blix has entered the Dalek city, and he's like, "Of course you can go and inspect anything you want. I would never want to, stand in the way of democracy. It's great, you know."
Yeah.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah. And then he goes and betrays them to the Thals. You know,
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's you can see why, however much Bob Holmes may have added to it, but you know, it's a great creation. It's a great creation from the start, and clearly, Nation relished writing him.
Yeah,
you know, you can tell the writer enjoyed, and I'm sure he enjoyed Nyder as well. You know, there are characters to get your teeth into there, I think, and yeah.
And that's it for yours. Do you have a favourite line?
Come back to me. Let me think.
No worries. What about you, Mike? Favourite character, moment, and line?
Yeah, I'll rattle my things off. My favourite character is the Doctor. It's Tom. Enough said. Though I could say more. I'm not gonna. My favourite moment, I think, the debate between the Doctor and Davros. I would do it. To me, just trumps the "Do I have the right?" moment. Although both are really great. And my favourite line, I'm going to quote because I can, and it's really well written. It's from Davros, and it is, "To hold in my hand a capsule that contains such power, to know that life and death on such a scale was my choice, to know that the tiny pressure of my thumb, enough to break the glass, would end everything. Yes, I would do it. That power would set me up above the gods. And through the Daleks, I shall have that power." I just think the delivery and the writing just hit you.
Yeah, your letter from the RSC is on its way, mate.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think my only real reaction to that scene every time I watch it is, oh, this guy is completely insane then.
Yeah. You batshit, dude.
I think I've come up with mine.
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's from that scene that I was talking about. Yeah. Ours is the victory, Nida. We have won.
Yeah.
They talk of democracy, freedom, fairness. Those are the creeds of cowards. The ones who will listen to 1,000 viewpoints and try to satisfy them all. Achievement comes through absolute power, and power through strength. They have lost.
Yeah, character, I've got the Doctor. I think Tom gives some of the best performance in this. I love him. Moment, I'm going to go with, the... and in commas here, execution of Davros, where the Daleks flip the switch and show the audience that, they're not something to just be ordered around. And then
the cheesiest ever total destruction switch written in blatant English.
Yeah.
On a film can.
Yeah. And that speech and sorry, the line, my favorite line, we touched on it earlier, that, excuse me, can you help me? I'm a spy. So,
excuse me, I'm a spy.
Yeah. So yeah, there's similar vibes there. I mean, it's clear this one is a standout for a reason, but we'll see just how much of a standout it is as we come to our final roundup and score. So again, Phil, would you like to go first? What are your final thoughts and score out of 5 for Genesis of the Daleks?
Yeah, it's a seminal story, really. It's the first time that the series, I think, had sort of gone back and kind of thought about how a regular sort of enemy or monster had first surfaced, and it's just everything comes together. Yes, it has its not everything. It's not perfect. We do get a nice warrior shell crawling around with some funny sound effects over the top of it, and some clams. There's a couple of dodgy effects, but they don't get in the way of the main story, which is Davros, really. Iconic, really. I wouldn't say it's my favorite ever story, so I'd probably say 4.5 out of 5.
Cool. Mike, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go? And because I know you usually have a dissertation, so
I was just going to say mine. And looking at this, it's way longer than I even thought it was. I apologize. Right, let me just get into this. Let's get one thing straight first. This is a great story. It became iconic for very good reasons. The moral dilemma, the performances, and the way the whole thing plays out are legendary because they're genuinely effective, affecting, and thought-provoking. Davros's origin story, despite being a clear retcon, was not only accepted but lauded because it's that good. The Nazi allegory is unmistakable, social subtext is unmissable, and the power dynamics feel eerily familiar. There's lots to admire. The performances are uniformly excellent, hitting every mark. The story wrestles with complex questions, avoiding simple good versus evil binaries among the warring races, all of whom are ultimately being manipulated by a true evil that knows no loyalty. That this evil is ultimately a victim of his own hubris makes me long for the story to be prescient, but I digress. The regulars are in top form in one of the strongest seasons of the classic era, and yes, Davros is an iconic addition who instantly cements his place both in the show and in pop culture. But the episode isn't perfect. I feel a little guilty joining the chorus calling it overrated, a side effect of decades of high praise. If you're making a list of greatest Doctor Who stories, this absolutely belongs on it. But the best, I'd argue it's not even the best Dalek story. My love for the power of the Daleks is now well known. And it's definitely not the best story in season 12. The arc in space edges it. It suffers from the usual 6-parter lag, too much running back and forth between the same locations, some laughably bad monster attacks, and a filler subplot involving the Thal rocket that exists largely to give Sarah something to do, though to her credit, she kicks butt and Sladen is brilliant as ever. The pacing is uneven, the repeated cross and double cross beats wear thin, and there just isn't enough of the actual Daleks, this being the story where they begin playing second fiddle to their creator. As powerful as the great elements are, the flaws can't be ignored, but make no mistake, this is by no means a negative review. I understand why this story gained a reputation as the best of the best. If it now has to settle for being one of, rather than the best classic Doctor Who story, that's hardly a failure. Nearly 50 years later, it still does deserve to be talked about. And I gave it 4.5 out of 5 as well.
Oh, right.
After all that.
That's fair enough. Yeah, it's a classic for a reason. What else is there to say about this that hasn't already been said? It takes the Doctor's most famous enemy, and in the way that Doctor Who so often does with established concepts, repurposes them and gives them a whole new breath of life. They're the same creature, but they've been given another layer, helped along by one of the most instantly iconic characters in the history of the show, Davros. Drawing parallels between Nazi Germany, or something much closer to home, the story is filled with a sense of foreboding and tension that lifts this to something special. Sure, the effects are aging, some of the character acting, a little ropey at times, but it's all part of that 70s BBC charm, which to me adds a distinct grittiness to proceedings. The main characters are played to perfection, and Baker is at his very best here. And those final scenes with the Daleks are just chilling. Honestly, there's so much hyperbole surrounding this one, it's hard to believe it, but it's mostly justified. And that's why, from me, this gets a 4.5 also. So, yeah, it's a tricky one to work out this time. But, yeah, when combined, we're going to give Genesis of the Daleks a combined hit or miss score of 4.5.
I had my calculator open to try and work that out, and I'd written 4.5 twice, and then was just like, if he goes 4.5, I closed my calculator up with shame.
I did exactly the same, mate, while you were reading yours out. So, yeah, let's be honest, it was kind of expected. I mean, its reputation precedes it, and with good reason. It has its faults, but it's still up in the higher echelons.
Yeah.
So, what do you out there think? Do you have any opinions on this one? If so, let us know on our socials. We're always listening. In the meantime, that's it from us here in the studio, and all that's left for me to do is thank our guest today. So, Phil, first of all, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. It's been fun. Thank you.
Nice one. You've had a good time then, yeah? You'd be up for coming back at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great stuff. Now, we normally allow our guests to drop some promotion or social media if they so wish. Do you have anything up and coming you'd like to mention, or any socials where the listeners can find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Phil Newman Design, but that's DSIGN, so D sign without the E. And it's the same on Blue Sky. I'm Cosmic_Phil on Instagram. I don't think I've got anything coming up in Doctor Who wise in the near future, but I'll be designing some shows a bit later in the year up in Leicester, but too early to go into details about that yet. But yeah.
Nice one. Well, we'll make sure to get those links in the description so people can find you if they so wish. And thanks also to my esteemed co-host, Mr. Wilson. Pleasure as always, fella.
Hello. Yes, thank you.
God, don't start
It
again.
sounds more like Philip Maddock than Tom Baker.
I can get you in there.
I'll betray you to the Daleks and get shot in a big shed.
I'm assuming the regular listeners know we'll be back at some point soon. So
I can get into that if you want. I've got a little
go for it.
Here.
I was going to say, is there anything particular you want to draw attention to while you're here, mate?
Yeah, we haven't really mentioned it yet, but this is going to be the last of the Doctor Who reviews for a little while. We do have 2 more Dalek reviews coming up at various points in the year to finish off this series. But next month, because we're going back to monthly for a while, we're switching franchises on Who Trek here back over to Star Trek, and we're going to have a full series review of Star Trek Prodigy, as it looks that like the 2 seasons that we've had are probably all we're going to get now. So we'll be doing that. And meanwhile, over on the Silver Screen channel, Cinema Classics is coming back very soon, and we're going to be reviewing an actual Stone Cold classic, Some Like It Hot. So do feel free to go over there and subscribe to the Silver Screen channel. And I'm sure you probably have a cult classic coming up as well, DK, that you want to plug for.
Nice one. Yep. Total Recall for Cult Classics next. So, yeah, you can catch Mike and myself over on there. Mike Cinema Classics, my old Cult Classics channel, and Silver Screen Regular, as well as, you know, if you want to come back for this, and Star Trek if you're a particular fan of that franchise. We're off now to go looking for our time ring. I'm sure I've dropped it in a corridor somewhere. So hopefully we'll see you next time. And in the words of our favourite Time Lord, Alon Z.
You've been listening to the Hit or Miss Doctor Who podcast, part of the Hit or Miss Who Trek channel. Hit or Miss Doctor Who is hosted by Mike Wilson and DK. Behind the scenes and additional material by DK, scripted, produced, and edited by Mike Wilson. Adapted from an original podcast created by Will Templar. Follow us on YouTube, your podcatcher of choice, and our social media. Links to all of these can be found by clicking on the link tree in the episode descriptions. This podcast is a Media Matters original production. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast through all of time and space. We'll be back for another thrilling TARDIS trip soon, but for now, Doctor, I let you go.